The BFG by Ronald Dahl. A Trogglehumper for the Fleshlumpeater. This is after Sophie was back in the waist pocket after they went to the dreamland, the dream catching place, right? So now we start. The Trogglehumper for the Fleshlumpeater. They is always having 50 winks before they go scumpering off to hunt human beings in the evening, the BFG said. He stopped for a few moments to let Sophie have a better look. Giants is only sleeping every then and now, he said. Not nearly as much as human beings. Human beings is crazy for sleeping. Is it ever occurring to you that a human being who is 50 is spending 20 years sleeping fast? I must admit, that never occurred to me, Sophie said. Imagine it, please. The human being who says he is 50 has been asleep for 20 years and is not even knowing where he is, not even doing anything, not even thinking. It is a funny thought, Sophie said. Exunkly. Exunkly? It's supposed to be exactly, right? Turn to your neighbor, turn to your brother, turn to your sister, turn to mommy and go, exactly, the BFG said. So, what I is trying to explain to you is that a human being who says he is 50 is not 50. He is only 30. So how old is Daddy then? Maybe Daddy is 26. Maybe 25? What about me, Sophie said. I'm 8. You is not 8 at all, the BFG said. Human being babies and little childers is spending half their time sleeping, so you is only 4. Suji, you turn 9, maybe you're only 4.5. And Joshua, maybe you are only 3 years old. And Jojo, maybe you're only 2.5. And Jesse, you're only like 1. But Sophie said this. I'm 8, Sophie said. You may think you is 8, the BFG said, but you has only spent 4 years of your life with your little eyes open. You is only 4, and please stop higgling me. Titchy little snap whippers like you should not be higgling around with an old sage and onions who is hundreds of years more than you. How much do giants sleep? Sophie asked. They is never wasting much time snoozling, the BFG said. 2 or 3 hours is enough. When do you sleep? Sophie peeping out of, even less, the BFG answered. I is sleeping only once in a blue baboon. Baboon? I think he meant blue moon. Sophie, peeping out of her pocket, examined the 9 sleeping giants. They looked even more grotesque now than when they were awake. Sprawled out across the yellow plain, they covered an area about the size of a football field. Most of them were lying in their backs with their enormous mouths wide open. And they were snoring like foghorns. The noise was awful. Pretend like you're snoring. Loud though. Louder. The noise was awful. Suddenly, the BFG gave a jump in the air. By Gumfrog, he cried. I is just having the most whoopsie-whiffling idea. What? Sophie said. Wait, he cried. Hold your horse feathers. Keep your skirt on. Just you wait to see what I is going to bring about. He galloped off fast to his cave with Sophie, hanging on tight to the rim of his pocket. He rolled back to the stone. He entered the cave. He was very excited. He was moving quickly. You stay where you is in my pocket, Huggy Bee, he said. We is doing this lovely bit of buck washing both together. He laid aside the dream-catching net, but hung onto the suitcase. He ran across the other side of the cave and grabbed the long trumpet thing, the one he had been carrying when Sophie first seen him in the village. With the suitcase in one hand and trumpet in the other, he dashed out of the cave. What is he up to now? Sophie wondered. Peep your head up good, the BFG said. Then you will get a fine winkle of what is going on. When the BFG came near the sleeping giants, he slowed his pace. He began moving softly. He crept on his toes towards the ugly brutes. They were still snoring loudly. They looked repulsive, filthy, diabolical. The BFG tiptoed around them. He went past the gizzard gulper, the blood bottler, the meat dripper, and the child chewer. Then he stopped. Freeze! He reached the Fleshlumpeater. He pointed at him. Then he looked down at Sophie and gave her a big wink. Can you wink? Pretty good. Tell the person who gave you a wink, pretty good. He knelt on the ground and very quickly he opened the suitcase. He took out the glass jar containing the terrible, nightmarish Trogglehumper. At that point, Sophie guessed what was going to happen next. Ouch, she thought. This could be rather dangerous. She crouched lower in the pocket so that only the top of her head and her eyes were showing. She wanted to be ready to duck out of sight very fast should anything go wrong. They were about 10 feet away from the lump eater's face. The snoring, snorting noise he was making was disgusting. Every now and again, a big bubble of spit formed between his two lips and then burst with a splash and covered his face with saliva. Taking infinite care, the BFG unscrewed the top of the glass jar, tipped the squirming, faintly scarlet Trogglehumper into the wide end of his long trumpet. He put the other end of the trumpet to his lips. He aimed the instrument directly at the Fleshlumpeater's face. He took a deep breath, puffed out his cheeks, and then woof, he blew. Do you see it? The BFG blew into the big giant. Sophie saw a flash of pale red go darting towards the giant's face. For a split second, it hovered over the face. Then it was gone. It seemed to have been sucked up by the giant's nose, but it happened so quickly Sophie couldn't be sure. We had better be skittling away to where it is safe, the BFG whispered. He trotted off for 100 yards, then he stopped. He crouched low to the earth. Now, he said, we is waiting for the gun and flames to begin. They didn't have long to wait. The air was suddenly pierced by the most fearful roar Sophie had heard. He saw the Fleshlumpeater's body, all 54 feet of it, rise up off the ground and fall back again with a thump. Then he began to wriggle his wrist and bounce about the most violent fashion. It was quite frightening to watch. Yow! Cried the lump eater. Yow! Oh! He's still asleep, the BFG whispered. The terrible trump-humping nightmare is beginning to hit him. Serves him right, Sophie said. She could feel no sympathy for such a great brute who ate children as though they were sugar lumps. Save us, screamed the lump eater, thrashing about madly. He is after me. He's getting me. The thrashing of his limbs and the waving of his arms became more violent by the second. It was an awesome thing to watch such a massive creature having such a mighty convulsion. It's Jack, bellowed the Fleshlumpeater. It's the gruelful, gruntious Jack. Jack is after me. Jack is a whack crackling me. Jack is spike sticking me. Jack is splash bunking me. It's a terrible fright swiping Jack. The Fleshlumpeater was writhing about the ground, some colossal, tortured type of snake. Oh, spare me, Jack, he cried. Don't hurt me, Jack. Do you see him? The Fleshlumpeater having a nightmare. Who is this Jack? Sophie whispered. Jack is the only human being all giants is frightened of, the BFG told her. They is all absolutely terrified of Jack. He is all hearing that Jack is a famous giant killer. Save me, screamed the Fleshlumpeater. Having mercy on this poor little giant, the beanstalk. He is coming at me with this terrible spike-sticking beanstalk. Take it away. I is begging you, Jack. I is praying you not to touch me with your terrible spike-sticking beanstalk. Us giants, the BFG whispered, is not knowing very much of this dreaded human being called Jack. We is knowing only that he's a famous giant killer and that he is owning something called a beanstalk. Do you guys remember that story? Jack and the Beanstalk? Maybe they learned about that too. We is back to the story. BFG is saying, we is knowing also that the beanstalk is a fearsome thing and Jack is using it to kill giants. Sophie couldn't stop smiling. What is you griggling at? The BFG asked her, slightly nettled. I'll tell you later, Sophie said. Here's the giant going crazy, the Fleshlumpeater, and here's the BFG with the trumpet, and there's Sophie. I'll tell you later, Sophie said. I'm going to pause right here. This is section 1 of the Fleshlumpeater and the Trogglehumper, because we're going on a lot of minutes, so we'll go to the next section. So this is section 1 of that.